at this point, I genuinely believe that I would never come out. Like, it wasn't even in my frame of what could possibly happen in my life. I was at this point 100% convinced that if I ever come out, my life will be over, and I won't. I was sure that I was going to take it to the grave. Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of the video about my coming out story. I just want to say a massive thank you for such a great response in part 1. I think even seeing all of those comments and people engaging with it just kind of reaffirms what I already thought. There is such a power in simply just telling your story, or literally just sitting down with a friend or a loved one and talking through your experience in a way that you haven't before. So yeah, let's get into part 2. Okay, so number 1, Happy New Year. It is New Year's Day today. I am very excited for 2026 and all the big things that are coming up. I'm actually not hungover today, which is probably a first for New Year's Day. And let me just tell you, this might be the start of a sober New Year's Eve for me, because well, not necessarily sober, but maybe a few beers instead of 10, because I'm actually feeling so optimistic about 2026, and I think this is probably the first year I've woken up on 2026 and not felt existential dread. So it's an improvement. Anyway, let's get into part 2 of my coming out story. So in part 1, we left off with me finishing secondary school, and just to slightly recap, secondary school was a very homophobic environment. Like, the jokes, the comments, the casual homophobia was a daily thing. Like, there was no escape for it. It was something that became a daily part of my life. And I think I was at the stage coming towards the end of secondary school where, yes, okay, there was so much homophobia, and it was like comments, small little comments being made every single day. Any sort of behaviour that was negative was normally associated with being gay. And I think during that time I was in such a state of denial and kind of had dissociated from the idea that I was gay. So hearing all of those comments, they weren't, in that moment, I wasn't taking them personally, because I'd somehow managed to convince myself that, I'm not gay, so these comments aren't about me, they don't matter. But without a doubt, I internalised every single one of those comments that I heard. So when I was leaving secondary school, I don't think I'd ever felt more scared about the possibility of being gay. I think my internalised homophobia was at its absolute peak. And I wasn't someone who ever expressed their internalised homophobia in a way of bullying or ridiculing other people and making gay jokes myself, because, if I ever saw a gay person, I would always be, nice and respectful and wouldn't ever really make fun of them. That wasn't something that I ever did or felt like I wanted to do. I know that is sometimes an expression of people's internalised homophobia, but that's just not my story. But what did happen was I would see these gay people, I would, treat them with respect, I would be lovely to them, I would speak to them, but I would always think to myself, they can do that, but I will never ever do that. I can't think of anything worse than being like them, or being seen like them, or being perceived like them. I just could not think of anything worse than being like one of these gay people that I saw. Even the happiest, most free, most outwardly gay, most proud people who seemed so happy, I saw them and I thought, fuck me, if I am ever like that, my life will be over. It was just an absolute terrifying thought. Anyway, with that, I went to uni and I had a very clear idea of how I wanted to present myself at uni. I know a lot of people see university as a time to reinvent themselves and finally be free and be who they've always wanted to be. But for me, my internalised homophobia and my self-image and my self-worth was at its all-time worst. Because at this point, I genuinely believed that I would never come out. Like, it wasn't even in my frame of what could possibly happen in my life. I was at this point 100% convinced that if I ever come out, my life will be over, and I won't. I was sure that I was going to take it to the grave. And that's crazy to think about now, but this was a while ago. This was about 6 years ago, so a lot of time has passed and my mindset has changed a lot. But at this time, I truly, really thought, like, I will never, ever, ever tell anyone, and no one is ever going to know this about me. It sounds kind of funny in retrospect, but the whole summer of 2020, so before I went to uni, I was kind of revising on how to be the perfect straight guy that I wanted to be before I went to uni. So I spent the whole summer watching, because I'd never been into football, like, it had just never been something that I'd liked, and I never liked it, and I didn't even really try to like it, because I was at the point where I honestly, I watch a football game and my eyes glaze over. Like, I cannot think of anything worse than sitting for 90 minutes and watching a football game. So I'd never really even began to attempt to like football. But I decided, if I'm going to go to uni and really solidify this whole, I'm straight, I'm a lad, I'm someone who no one would ever suspect is gay, I was like, I need to have a good knowledge of football, because not liking football equals gay. That was my logic. Looking back, it doesn't really make much sense, but bear with me, because nothing in my brain was making sense at this time. So I watched something called Premier League Years, which is a summary of the main football league in the UK, and it's like a yearly review of that season, and each year they release kind of like an hour and a half long documentary which summarizes the football season. So I sat all summer and watched from 1993 Premier League season to 2020 Premier League season. I watched, what's that, fucking 27 documentaries about the Premier League. I sat and watched 27 documentaries about the Premier League yearly reviews, so I would know everything I needed to know to go to uni and pretend I liked football. I mean, the commitment, I respect the commitment to the cause, to be honest. It's kind of insane looking back, but one thing I can say is I was committed to the cause. Anyway, so I did that. I went to uni, and action, like, I put on this persona. I went through my first year of uni just like maintaining this persona. It probably got to a point around April time of first year, so about 9 months in, where I was just really, really tired. I think mentally had reached a point of exhaustion, because it's really tiring, like, not being yourself. And I think when you're at uni, you're around your friends all the time. So the way I felt, I was like constantly lying. Like, it wasn't just about my sexuality, I was keeping it quiet. Like, I was lying about my interests. Like, I had to pretend. I think football was the main thing for me. Like, I had to pretend to be interested in something that I just did not care about. And I felt like I dug myself too deep of a hole, because I came to uni with this kind of, oh, I love football, so if I'd back out of it, it would seem like a lie. So I was just tired. I was just drained from pretending to be someone that I wasn't. And I think I'd kept it up for such a long time, but for some reason it was becoming unsustainable, and my mental health was really plummeting. I was starting to feel depressed and low in a way that I'd never experienced before. And I think that this was just a combination of years and years of hiding and fear and worry and stress. Uni is such a heightened environment that these emotions, they come to the surface and you are confronted with things that you haven't necessarily had to confront before. These are both my friends from uni. These are both my friends from uni. I'm just talking about uni at the moment. So what was your perception of me at uni?
Perception of you at uni?
Yeah,
big football fan, definitely overcompensated on being a massive Spurs fan. You had like a literally like 3 metre by 3 metre flat Spurs flag in your room, and you loved watching the Premier League history documentaries.
I did. I just spoke about that. Right. So, one evening I was at uni and I was just chilling in my room and I decided to watch a movie. It was called Love, Simon, and it's a coming of age movie about this guy who's gay and comes to terms with his sexuality. It's just a kind of coming of age gay film. This guy comes out, it's a happy ending, his friends, his family accept him and he falls in love. I don't really know why I decided to watch it that night, but I did, and I couldn't have expected it to have the effect that it did have on me. I think for the first time ever in my life, I saw a possibility of the future. I know it was a movie and I know it's not real life, but I'd genuinely never seen at this point any positive representation of a gay person. I had no concept of what my future could look like. I always thought that I would have to get married to a girl and I would have to have kids with a girl and that would be the only way to be happy. That's kind of all I'd seen. Like that was what, my parents, all of their friends, all of my family, all of the media that I consumed, it was all based on love around a man and a woman, and I just there was nothing for me to look to. My future was blurred. I couldn't see into it in the way that I'd always envisioned, that I think a lot of people envision their lives going and their love stories unfolding and the relationships that they put on a pedestal. For me, I had nothing of the sort to do that with. So I'd always struggled to see a future for myself. And I think that's why I was so scared. So seeing a movie where, I can kind of relate to this guy. I kind of gone through the same thing and he ends up okay. In that moment, I was like, maybe there is something for me. Maybe there is like a path where I can embrace this part of myself. And there, like that night, I decided I'm gonna face this. I'm not gonna suppress it. It was there on that night that for the first time I actually came out to myself. I think for years and years I was in this internal battle. I was fighting with the idea that I was gay. It was something that was in the back of my mind and then like creeping forwards, and I would always push it back. I would always find an excuse of why it's not something I have to deal with and it's going to go away and it's okay, and that just ignore it. But that night I decided to let it be. I decided to accept who I was, and that was really, really hard, but probably the best decision I ever made in my life. So from that point onwards, I'd accepted that I was gay, so I had to now face up to that. And even though I had accepted it, it didn't make it any easier. It didn't make it something that I wanted or something that I felt okay about. It was just something that I wasn't denying anymore. I had no one to speak to because I didn't feel like I could speak to any of my friends about it. So I kind of had to deal with it all on my own. I think the fact that I'd been kidding myself for such a long time meant that I had this... I was able to sort of create some separation between me and the problem that I was facing. But now it all felt very, very real. And I decided that I wanted to come out to a friend. I wanted to share the burden because I couldn't take it on my own anymore. I needed someone to speak to. So I did that. I decided to come out to a close friend of mine. I marked the date in the calendar that I was going to do it. I remember how hard it was for me to get the words out. My palms were sweaty, my heart was racing, it was beating out of its chest. I'm about to do something that's irreversible. I think you hold on to something for so long, you hold on to a secret for so long, that that secret, it almost becomes like part of you. It becomes kind of almost like attached to your body. Like my secret, my being in the closet was part of my identity, and I was about to I was about to shed my skin essentially. I was about to open myself up to someone in a way that I never had before, and it was terrifying. I was still super ashamed, but anyway, I did it, and I cried a lot, but we got through it. We spoke about it, and I'm super lucky to have had such a supportive friend, and she showed me that it's okay. She proved my worst fears wrong, that your friends are kind of just gonna run away and never speak to you again. And that was beautiful, and it made me feel like maybe there's a chance that I can do this again. Maybe I can tell another person. And I did. It took me a few months to build up the courage again, because I've just described how scary that was, but I did it, and I built the courage up again and told another friend, and then a few months later another friend. I think as well I was only telling my female friends at this point because that's all I could deal with. I think the majority of the homophobia that I spoke about earlier on in the video and in part 1 came from boys. So I'd internalized a lot of that and really feared the reaction of my male friends. I had all of these worries about how they would see me differently, or think that I was into them, or think that I couldn't be one of them, and like the dynamic would shift in a way that was just irreversible, and our friendship would be tainted. That year I somehow managed the courage to come out to my parents. You know, these were like really hard conversations to have, and I was having a lot of these hard, really difficult conversations. But what would happen is each conversation, it would go well, and, you know, it would be okay, and these people would still be in my life, and they wouldn't have run away like I thought they would. Like each time gave me a little bit more confidence, and it made the next time a little bit easier. And it wasn't easy for a long time. Having to have that conversation with someone is incredibly difficult, and it took a lot, but each time I progressed and I grew, and I was able to find a little bit more strength, and eventually it became something that I looked forward to, because it would mean that I was bringing a friend into it doesn't mean I wasn't nervous, but I would know that all my friends that knew, our relationships felt so much deeper. My family, like I felt like I had a deeper relationship with them than I ever had, because we were finally communicating honestly. And I realised that anyone from this point onwards that I told in my life, I was marking the start of a new kind of era of our relationship. We were now going to connect on a level that was genuine and that was real, and that wasn't based on a secret. And I can't even describe how different I feel about my friendships and relationships with my family, and all relationships in my life since I came out, because they finally, for the first time, I felt like it was a relationship between the person and me, but like truly me, not half of me or a filtered down version of me, but really me. And knowing that you're being yourself, and the people who you love are still there, they haven't gone anywhere, they've stuck around, it builds you up in confidence, and it makes things feel makes things feel like they're going to be okay. Hey guys, so yeah, that was my coming out story. Funnily enough, even though I just spoke through about 21 years of my life, and ended on a nice note, I think it's quite important to say that when you come out, in my opinion, rather than that being the end of your story, it's actually the beginning. And there's a whole new bucket load of things that you need to deal with. Some of those are amazing, some of those are liberating and amazing new experiences which you just haven't been able to experience before, whereas some are more difficult things, attitudes, scars that were formed throughout all those years in the closet, mindsets that you've developed throughout your childhood that you kind of don't realise you still have because you think, oh, I've come out and now my life's better and my life's changed. But sometimes you're holding on to these ideas and messages and perceptions of yourself that you don't even realise are still there. So it's a complicated journey. I mean, there's no easy answer, there's no smooth fix or end result. So with that, there's a lot more to speak about. There's a lot more that I had to navigate after coming out of the closet, and I kind of feel like coming out of the closet was just the start for me. So that is it for today's video, but thank you so much for getting through it, being here with me, listening to my story, hopefully relating to some of my experiences, and I would love to hear down below anything that you particularly connected with, or anything from your own coming out story that you want to share and speak about, and hopefully we can strike up some pretty amazing conversations in the comments, because I know that there are so many people out there who are just looking around for someone who has had a similar experience to them that they can relate to, because as I said before, just that moment of connection, just that sort of realization that you're not alone is super powerful. So yeah, thank you so much.